In 2004, Matt and I bought these cookbooks for Granny for Christmas. It's like a volume 1 and volume 2, and I know the date. I would never remember that, but because we wrote in it, I've wrote Christmas 2004, love Matt and Tipper. So that's what we got Granny for Christmas. They're Recipes, Remedies, and Rumors is the name of it, and it was produced by the Cades Cove Presentation Association. You can still get it if you go to their website. You can still purchase them, and I guess that's where I got them back then. I can't remember where I got them. Anyway, I bought them from Granny, and I really like them. They've got all kinds of recipes, from desserts to spring tonics to whatever, but it's also got a lot of photos and a lot of history of the Cades Cove area before it was the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, the people that lived there. Well, about, I don't know, perhaps Monday will be the death anniversary of Pap, so he's been gone 5 years. So I guess about a year before he died, maybe a year and a half, he fell. He was at the church, and he was cleaning up in the fellowship hall by himself. He was mopping, and he slipped on the wet floor where he was mopping himself. Anyway, he broke his hip. Long story. I'll tell you that other story maybe someday about how everything happened after that. But anyway, when he broke his hip, of course, he was in the hospital. Then when he come home, he was on a walker. Well, Granny and Pap's house had to be rearranged, as you might imagine, make room for a walker where one had never been before. And I helped Granny and, go through stuff and rearrange and that kind of stuff. Well, when we were doing that, we come across these cookbooks. They weren't in the kitchen. She had them back in the bedroom somewhere. So she told me I should just take them home and I should use them. So that's how I ended up with them. I've got them back now. But they're really great books because, like I said, tried and true recipes, people's family's favorite recipes handed down over the years. Those are my favorite kind of cookbooks. But also it has those great stories in them. So tomorrow we're going to go on a hike. I'll tell you more about that in another video. But I wanted to make some cookies so that we could take along for us and for our friends that we're going to be going with. So today I'm going to be making peanut butter cookies, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the recipe from the book, and then I'm going to show you how to make the cookies. The peanut butter cookie recipe I'm going to share with you today came from the Ledbetter family, and the cookbook has a little bit of their history, so I'm going to read that to you. Daniel and Elizabeth Forrester Ledbetter came from North Carolina to live in Cades Cove for a short time. Daniel was a millwright and a blacksmith. It's been told he made the wooden gears for the cable mill. Also, he was well known for the cowbells he made. Daniel and his wife went back to North Carolina, where Daniel later died. 2 of Daniel's sons settled in the White Oak Sinks area. James Allen married first, Angeline Flowers, and second, Mary Shields. Matthew Manuel, or Bud they called him, married first Mary Ann Sands and second Dorothea McClanahan. The Ledbetter family raised peas, corn, beans, tomatoes, potatoes, and wheat. There were apple orchards also. In this area grew an abundance of chestnuts. They would gather the chestnuts to sell in Townsend. The vegetables were often sold in Knoxville. The trip to Knoxville took 3 days by horse and wagon. The house Matthew, or Bud, lived in was said to have been a large house. The remains of the chimney can still be seen. The cellar always had plenty of food. Cans of honey were kept there along with the rest. Their kitchen table was said to have been 16 feet long. That's a big kitchen table. Their main source of water was from a spring near Scott Mountain. During dry spells, a horse and a wagon was used to haul their water in barrels from the spring. Matthew Manuel Bud Ledbetter and his family worked hard through the week. Sunday was their day to rest. If the boys got rowdy, Bud put them in the fields picking up rocks. They used to make rock walls. The rock walls were used to keep cows or deer out of the garden and to turn the water off the crops. Daniel Calvin, Cal Ledbetter, they called him Cal, and Anna Rebecca Shields, daughter of Frederick David and Phoebe Jane Walker Shields, decided to get married. They eloped on horses. Anna had on all 5 of her dresses. One day, Bud told Tom, his son, to take the mule and go plow the lower 40. No one saw Tom the rest of the day. About supper time, Bud said he better go check on Tom. He found the mules tied to a tree and no sight of Tom. The next day they heard from Tom. It was in the form of a letter. Tom had run off and joined the army. After working in the hot fields all day, Grandpa Bud would go down to the blowing hole cave and cool off. In the summertime, cold air comes out just like air conditioning. These rumors and legends were passed to us by Paul Ledbetter, son of Cal, and it was submitted by David Lee Ledbetter, son of Toy Calvin Ledbetter. So interesting to hear about the family and think about them living there in Cades Cove. That's such a beautiful area today, but I would have liked to have seen it back when people lived there, when people were still settled there. So since I'm going to be making these cookies for a trip and for us to share with friends, I'm going to double the recipe, and I'll link to the recipe in the description below, so you don't need to worry about writing this down, but I'll just go over the ingredients that she used. So she had one, and this would be for a single run of cookies, not doubling it like I'm about to do. So a half a cup of shortening, a half a cup of sugar, 1 egg, 1 1/4 cup self-rising flour, 3/4 teaspoon of soda. Soda is how Granny and Pap would say it. It's really baking soda. 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 cup peanut butter, 1/4 cup light brown sugar, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then once we get them mixed up, we're going to bake them. Actually, the recipe does not tell you what degrees to bake them at. It does. That's just, you know, sometimes old recipes leave out things. So I, somewhere along the way, figured out what I like to do is I bake them at 425 for 6 minutes in my oven. Your oven may be hotter or maybe cooler than mine, so you may need to play around with that 6 minutes and see what works for you. But now I'm going to show you how to put the cookies together. So I've got the self-rising flour in the strainer here. I like to use it as a sifter sometimes. Granny had a sifter, and I think I've got one somewhere with the little turn handle. I used to love to play with that when I was little. That was my favorite thing to do, helping Granny, was to use that sifter. But today I just like to, most of the time I just grab this and use it because it's handy. But I'm going to add the baking powder, baking soda, and salt to the flour and just sift it in here. Now that I've got the dry ingredients sifted, we'll go over to the mixer. So I have the shortening in the mixer, and now I'm going to add the peanut butter and let it mix up together. And I suppose you could use crunchy peanut butter if you prefer, if you wanted nuts in your cookies. I'm just using creamy peanut butter today. Now we're just going to let that mix. Okay, that's mixed up pretty good. Now we're going to add both of our sugars, the brown sugar and the white sugar, all at once. And give it another mix. I'm going to scrape down the sides. And add the eggs. Of course, I'm using 2 eggs because I'm doubling the recipe, but you would just be using 1 if you just use the regular recipe. Now that that's mixed, we can start adding our dry ingredients. I like to add a little bit and then let it mix and then add the rest. You see this little cup? It's got measurements on it. I have no idea where I got it. Maybe Miss Cindy, but I've had it for years and years and years. And not long ago, the handle come off of it. And I got ridiculously upset about it. Of course, I didn't cry or nothing, but I was just sad. I was like, I've had that forever, and I love that little, it's just so cute, little pot, but it's a measuring thing. And I just set it to the side. I wasn't going to throw it away. I just thought, well, I'll still use this part. But Matt didn't tell me. He snuck and got it, and then he took it downstairs and he riveted the handle back on it. So I thought that was sweet. So now I still get to use it. And I really don't know where I got it, but I know that I've had it for so long. It's like part of my kitchen. I don't want to get rid of it. I'm going to put the rest in there. I'm going to mix again. falling out on me. Now that we've got it all mixed up, I'll show you what we do next. Now that the cookie dough is completed, we'll take a little piece, and this just depends on how big you want your cookies, if you want them really small or if you want them big, and we're just rolling them in balls. This part is not part of the recipe. That's the Ledbetter recipe just puts them in balls and then puts them on a cookie sheet ungreased and then puts them in the oven. I like to roll mine in sugar, so I've got a plate full of sugar here just to give them a little crunch on the outside. So I'll do that for each of them. I'll do a few here. Grady never really made peanut butter cookies much when I was young. I don't know, it wasn't her thing. I had an aunt that made really good peanut butter cookies. I remember them. And I've made there's a really simple recipe where you use just sugar and peanut butter, I think. That's all. Maybe there's one other thing. And that's a good recipe too, but I just especially like this one. It just they turn out really kind of crunchy on the outside, but soft and crumbly on the inside every time I make them. This is my go-to peanut butter cookie recipe, I guess. So once they're kind of all rolled around a little bit in the sugar, you could also put them in a bag or something and shake them around. I'll put them on a cookie sheet, and then I use the tines of the fork to go, and I'm sure you've seen this before, to go like make a little crisscross pattern on them. And you don't have to do that either. You could just mash them down with your fingers if that's what you want to do. I think the little crisscross makes them just a little prettier. This is a good recipe to do with kids because they really enjoy rolling the little balls. It gives them something. It's almost like playing with Play-Doh is what it reminds me of. Lets them actually put their hands get their hands involved. The messing and the gomming, that's what I always liked, that part of it. Another thing you can do with the dough, if you like just the fresh baked cookies, you know, that's when they're the best, when they come out straight out of the oven, is you can keep the dough in your refrigerator and just make them as you need them. And I'd say it would last at least maybe a week in the refrigerator. So if you wanted to make it ahead of time, if you had company coming over, or if you just love those fresh baked cookies and wanted to make a few each day, you could do that. Now I'm going to put these in the oven. So all the cookies are baked now, and I've already tested them, so they're really good as usual. I was going to show you this one up close so you can see. They're so good. I wish I could give you one right now, each of you. But they'll be really good on our hike that we're going to go on tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the Ledbetters from Cades Cove, and I hope that you enjoyed seeing how they made their peanut butter cookies, which is how I make mine, my favorite way to make them. I hope you'll leave a comment and tell me what's your favorite peanut butter cookie recipe. But mostly I just hope you'll drop back by often as I celebrate Appalachia.